The Milwaukee Public Schools has some of the best people, bar none, working for it, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. As a board and administration, we have painstakingly put together a game plan based on the K-12 teaching and learning goals and school to work. It is also based on eliminating tracking and remediation. It is based on raising standards and expectations, and there's accountability. At the School to Work end session, a young man from Hamilton reminded me of how personal education is to young people. They want to be loved, and they want to be respected, and they expect educators to believe they can and they will be somebody. They want the education you want for your children. Therefore, if MPS is not good enough for your children or grandchildren, you are not good enough for MPS. If that shocks you, you are not being honest with yourselves, because the kids already know this. They already know who cares about them and who's putting in time and who's just picking up a paycheck. Children who drop out of school always say, "No one cared. No one even knew we were there. They won't miss me." We don't want you there if you don't care. For too long, the system has protected the adults at the expense of the children because we forgot to put the children first. No more. If this makes you mad right now, that's okay. And if you're still mad when you think about this tomorrow, call me. I'll help you find a place where you will be happier out of education. I am convinced we can never satisfy this system's the need the system has to hear only good news. After trying everything short of billboards and skywriting to acknowledge good people and good things happening in this system, it has begun to dawn on some of us that a few of you are taking a lot of our time and getting a lot of negative attention, just like that small group of students in our schools. It is this small group that is keeping the people who really care about our children, people who are willing and eager to change, from shining like the stars they are. Part of accountability is telling the world that there will be no more trickle-down, hand-me-down, second-class education for city children. If I haven't convinced you of the need to get with the program or get out, I will tell you, we believe that there will be a concerted effort to push vouchers as a solution to our educational financing in the spring. The future of public education in Wisconsin may be at stake. Mark Twain said, "Out of the public school grows the greatness of a nation." Unlike other nations and many private and parochial schools, we are committed to and celebrate our diversity. American public education is the best in the world, especially around socialization, and don't underestimate socialization. It's the best in the world at gender equity, at educating children with special needs and diversity. We take on all comers, and we're proud of it. Doing our job differently, better, and better will make us world class.
This is all about children. That's what this is about. Langston Hughes, in his poem Harlem, discussed dreams. And what Langston Hughes said is, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? I believe that the intent of this poem was to highlight the impact of racism on the psychic and the reality of African American people. But if Langston Hughes were alive, he would have to develop a sequel to describe the situation facing our children today. He would have to write a poem asking the question, what happens to a child, a young person who does not even have a dream? Too many of our children today do not dream, do not see themselves in a future role as active participants in the world of tomorrow. They are too busy planning for their funerals, like the 14-year-old girl last year from DC who was telling her mother what kind of dress she wanted to have when she laid in the coffin. Or like Chanel Childs, the 14-year-old Bell Middle School student who was shot in her eye while sleeping on her couch in her home when two animals sprayed her home with gunfire. And what she said was, I was praying that I wouldn't die. We have a community where the level of insanity has penetrated the psychic of our young people such that too many of them lack hope. They see no future, so why bother to dream? And so we, as a community, must recreate an atmosphere that encourages and nurtures all of our children's capacity to dream. And a critical element in making this happen is education. We must effectively educate all of our children. And some of you may think that the goal of education should be to prepare kids to fit into the framework of society as it currently exists. Those of you who have heard me speak before know that I totally disagree with this notion of the purpose of education. And I repeat for the umpteenth time, and I'm going to keep saying it, I agree with Richard Shaw, who wrote the preface for Paulo Freire's book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He stated that there is no such thing as a neutral educational process. Education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate the integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity to it, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to transform their world. And that, to me, is what this has to be about. Because if our kids are going to survive in this world that we have given to them, it's going to have to be transformed. And education is one of those elements that's critical to the transformation. And so in that regard, I believe that it will indeed take a whole village to educate a child. And that we have to understand that as a community, we all share in the responsibility of working hard to educate our children. We must find ways to work together as educators and parents and government and community and business leaders to provide the best education possible for all of our children. Not the best in Milwaukee, not the best in Wisconsin, but the best in the world, the best in the world for our children. Now, I'm sure that most of you have noticed that the audience today is a little different than it used to be. And I want to recognize the fact that not only do we have administrators and staff from the schools and central office, but this year we also have teachers, and we got parents, and we got students, and we got business leaders, and we got government leaders. We got a whole lot of folks up in here. And the reason why to have them up in here is because I decided that why would we have a kickoff for the school year and only bring the administrators together? And so I said, we ain't gonna do that no more. And so the idea is that all of us gotta be ready to go when school starts. So I wanna thank all of those who are here, and at the risk of messing up, I wanna introduce at least a few of them, because I'm very happy to see them, and I wanna thank them for being here, and especially the elected officials. But I wanna thank Chief Areola, who's back here, for coming. I want to thank County Executive Tom Ament for coming. I know that Sherry Hill is here representing the governor. I want to thank her for coming. Did I miss any elected officials? Because all y'all officials, but I mean, let's get to the elected ones. And could I have all of the parents who are here today stand up? And then I got a couple special guests. I only saw one of them. I know Ryan is here, but those of you who know that when I took this job 3 years ago, the first day I went to two schools. I went to Fernwood and I went to Granville. And I adopted a class at Granville and I adopted a class at Fernwood because I wanted to see if I lasted as a superintendent. Was I going to be around long enough to see those 8th graders at Fernwood become seniors? And lo and behold, this happened. And so this year, they're going to start as seniors. I'm not sure how many of them are here. I know Ryan is here. So if any could, Ryan, I know, could those of you stand just so that we could see? Ryan is, I'm real proud of him. He's a senior at Riverside, 3.5 grade point average. You know, we've been going to Bucks games for the last few years, and it's been fun to watch him grow. And his mother's here with him, and I really appreciate you all coming. Also would now like to ask if all of the teachers who were here would stand. Can I have the representatives from business and education who are here? I saw Herman Vietz from MSOE and Bill Randall and Tim Shee. Could you all please stand? But we got other business representatives here, partners from our schools, from our colleges, MATC, gas company. My good brother Audie here, who sells me my music, who needs to put a helmet on when he rides his motorcycle. And all the rest of y'all. Thank you for being here. Now, what I want to do is, I've been told that I've been talking about a system of schools, and Estelle and others are going to be to blame for this speech, because they keep saying, well, what do you mean, Howard, by a system of schools? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to break it down one more time so that everybody understands what the vision is and where we're headed. So I'm going to try to do 3 things this morning. I know this is going to be long, so some of you all may have to leave. That's fine. First thing I want to do is define with hopefully greater clarity what I mean by a system of schools. The second thing I want to do is to demonstrate how the system's goals of student achievement, equity, and fiscal responsibility are fostered by a system of schools. And in the process of doing that, point out examples where this is actually happening, and then suggest what the challenges are for the future. And then the third thing I want to do is go into more detail about K-12 and school to work. Those are my 3 objectives this morning. Let me begin to define a system of schools by using what Ron Edmonds called negative certainty, which is to, in essence, tell you what a system of schools is not. It is not 158 totally independent schools doing their own thing with no accountability for achieving the board's missions, goals, and objectives. It is not that. It is not a process for maintaining the status quo. It is not an effort to abolish all of the central office services, as I've been told. It is not, and I know this is going to be hard for some people to believe, a process to, quote, privatize the school system. It is not a push to empower only parents or only teachers or only principals. It's none of those things. What then is it? A system of schools is really about changing MPS, changing its organizational structure, and more importantly, changing its culture. Specifically, the operational definition of a system of schools is an organizational structure that uses decentralized and shared decision-making, encourages substantial change and innovation, embraces diversity, achieves continuous improvement, and is held accountable for student achievement. Now let me take each one of those characteristics and define them further. Decentralized and shared decision-making. It means moving decisions to the appropriate level in the organization. It means involving principals, teachers, parents, students, and the school community in making decisions about the school. It means creating involvement of all of the stakeholders in the key district-wide decision-making committees and processes. And finally, it means giving the school community control over budget, curriculum, staff development, and personnel decisions. That's what I mean by shared decision-making, the first characteristic of a system of schools. Second, substantial change and innovation. A system of schools means systemic change. Peter Senge, in his book, Fifth Discipline, referred to systemic change as the 5th discipline. Fundamental change, not just tinkering around at the edges. When we think about MPS today, all of us know that some of our current policies and practices are not broken and do not need to be fixed. Yet, many of these policies and practices still need to be improved even though they are not broken. And so I beg you to give up the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it way of thinking, and replace that idea with a cutting edge notion which supports improving things before they get broken. I also beg you to recognize that there's some policies and practices that are broken and need to become extinct. They don't need to be reformed, they need to die so that new schools of the future can emerge. What we should be committed to is the idea of increasing the use of effective policies and practices, reducing the use of ineffective policies and practices, and hastening the extinction of policies and practices that must expire if the lives of our students are to be transformed. Examples of the many of these policies can be found in a 1991 study of the National Association of Secondary School Principals. A group of them shadowed 8th graders during their school day. And the final report concluded that, quote, departmentalization dominates, schedules are rigid, students are grouped or tracked by ability, content coverage is the focus of nearly all instruction, and passive learning prevails. The lack of involvement and interaction by students makes the school day doubly tiring and boring to them as it was to the people who wasn't doing anything but shadowing the students. Now the question is, are we invariably married to these ideas? I hope not, but there's some others. Bell schedules, centralized contracts, administrative procedures, board rules, statewide mandates that push us towards everybody having to be the same. Rules, regulations, laws, policies that keep us from being held accountable, that assign people based on their longevity, not on their skills and their attitudes and their commitment to our children's learning. Management theorist Peter Drucker has noted there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. Albert Einstein made two observations that are instructive as we struggle to understand the urgency of the need to change in order to transform our schools. He defined insanity as the tendency to do what you've always done, but to expect different results. He further noted that significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when the problems emerged. We must clearly focus on the reality of the existence of differential power and access to resources in our society based on race and class. We cannot downplay the impact of race and class on our children's lives. Every day, it affects their perceptions and their life chances. These evils do not mean that our children cannot achieve, but they clearly pose historical and contemporary barriers that make their quest for a decent life infinitely more difficult. The second aspect of diversity, there is no one best system. We must say no to cookie-cutter schools, just as we should understand there can be no practice to create cookie-cutter students. We need to encourage schools and the district to explore a variety of themes, instructional strategies, educational philosophies, and governance arrangements. Fourth characteristic, continuous improvement. I'm going to use Estelle as a barometer, so if you follow me, let me know, because I'm trying to lay this out. Continuous improvement. It means beat your last best record. Every school, every department should constantly strive to do it better. Because when you cease trying to get better, you stop being good. Continuous improvement. The other person I forgot to introduce in the middle of all of this is my basketball coach, Vic Anderson from Northridge. I see Vic. And this is about continuous improvement. He was always telling me, he was always on my case to always improve. He used to hold us, bite us. I'm not going to get into this, because this is another speech. But I want to welcome him here. The fifth characteristic, accountability. I want y'all to listen close to this. Because I got the definition out of a book that some of y'all might not like to do, but forget it because he's got the best definition of accountability I've ever seen. Chester Finn, in his book, We Must Take Charge, Our Schools and Our Future, he said, accountability in any endeavor today means that specified goals or outcomes are supposed to be achieved, and that people throughout the organization are responsible for achieving them. Not just for following set procedures, putting in time, or going through the motions. Not even for making a valiant effort, but for actually producing desired results. To be responsible for outcomes includes knowing that consequences will follow from one's success or failure. These may be pleasant or not, but without predictable and sure consequences, there can be no true accountability. The purpose of developing an accountability system is not punishment or retribution. Accountability systems aren't criminal justice systems. And we do not build them because we are vengeful. We construct them because we want good results. And in this world, we have a greater likelihood of producing good results if consequences follow from success or failure. In essence, a good accountability system is a tripod. To stand upright, all three legs must be in place. Clearly stated goals, prompt and accurate information about progress towards them, positive and negative consequences that follow from that information. So now, what I've done is to give you my operational definition of a system of schools, and I've tried to expound on each of the characteristics that make up the concept. Now what I want to do is turn to the connection between a system of schools and the district's three goals of student achievement, equity, and fiscal responsibility. I'm going to try to do this by giving you specific examples to make the point. Now, I recognize that the 5 characteristics of a system of schools and the system's 3 goals are interrelated. In my quest for clarity and in the interest of time, I will focus on only the relationship between one goal and those 5 characteristics. And the goal I want to emphasize is student achievement. Now, let me begin by citing examples of continuous improvement as it relates to student achievement. I am proud to announce that in 1993-94 school year, 2 goals set by the Board of School Directors were actually met. This is important because it hadn't happened before. 85% of the 5th graders taking the writing sample scored a 4 or above. The board goal was 80%. The average grade point average for middle school students attending school 90% of the time climbed to 2.61. The board goal is 2.5. This past year, MPS 3rd grade students demonstrated their best performance ever on the 3rd grade reading test. 78% scored above the state standard compared with 65% in '93. What's critical here is our minority students made the biggest gains. That becomes critical because 75% of our school district is now minority. So you cannot make big jumps if they don't, okay? And this is not new math. This ain't even algebra. 16% more African Americans met the standard in '94 than '93. 13% more Hispanic students met the standard. 17% more American Indians met the standard. Also, the gap between the performance of MPS and the state was dramatically narrowed. In 1993, 23% fewer students in MPS passed the test than did students elsewhere in the state. This year, that gap shrunk to 13%. Now, these improvements are the result of the hard work of administrators, teachers, teachers' aides, non-instructional staff, parents, community volunteers in our schools that made improvement, combined with the strong supportive help of CO staff, people in C&I like Jacqueline and Pat Ellis and Martha Carter, the people in public information like Denise and Karen who put together the video, all of these things. All of this coming together, this hard work, led to this improvement. So that's an example of continuous improvement. The question is, what is the challenge? The challenge is for the schools who have surpassed the board goals to continue working to maintain the existing level if it isn't at 100%. See, because 85% is not good enough. See, you wouldn't think it was cool for your child, and it ain't cool for ours. And so the idea is we're going to get to 100%. And I believe it's a realistic goal to say that we want all of our third graders in Milwaukee public schools at 100% of a minimal state standard in reading. Now,